Hey guys, who do we have here? Who is this? So this is Shelly. Welcome to OCD Real Talk. And Shelly is someone who I've worked with for about 2 years, maybe.
I met Rob and Nick about 3 years ago, and then yeah, about two and a half years. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, something like that. Yeah, and she's been like an active part of our community in terms of at least the WhatsApp group. And I think at this point, I think you're a name that people also recognize because you've written quite a bit over the years and you've shared quite a lot of stuff and whatnot. But I really wanted you to come on here because you do have, I think, like an incredible story, more than you would like to give yourself credit for, I think sometimes. Um, so I think we can start off also just with the fact that you're someone who is working on your OCD recovery journey, but also you're in AA as well. And I
hmm
think that's an overlap that we see quite a lot, to be honest, in the people that we work with. And there are many people, I think, on the sidelines as well who watch this stuff who maybe have both things, but they're either confused or they don't know, um, where they're going or what they need to do about it. So I think I'll start like easy and just like ask you, do you actually remember when you first noticed that something's off? Either OCD or even, addiction wise, to be honest.
So yes, oddly enough, probably around age between like 3 and 5.
Oh wow,
So
no way.
no, if I can even remember that far. So I do remember, um, my mother had an incident. She was in the hospital and she almost passed away. They gave her something. She was allergic to it. And I remember like chaos. And I was very young. I was like, yeah, like 3 or 4. And I remember being in the hospital bed. I remember eating applesauce. And then there was like chaos. And my parents tell me, they're like, we don't think you were there when it happened. And I was like, maybe I just remember you telling me about it. I don't know. But that point on between ages, whatever it was, 3 to about 12, I was like addicted to my mom in a weird sense, I guess.
Okay.
Um, I didn't want to be away from her. I would have panic attacks if she left. Anytime they went on a trip, my sister's like, here we go again. Here comes the hyperventilating. And I would just sit in a chair, watch TV, and just like panic. My mind would just be off to the races. And I would have like panic attacks, hyperventilate until she got back.
Um,
So around age, so it faded a little bit. It wasn't like a constant thing. I did get a recording of my preschool. So my parents, we went through all of our VH tapes,
oh wow.
VHS.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You're
Um,
revealing your age, Shelly, a little bit.
listen, I'm very young, okay?
Yeah,
Um,
all my preschool stuff is on TikTok, by the way. But yeah.
Oh God, it probably is. Um, so we took them all and we put them on a DVD. This was probably like, I don't know, 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And we were playing it, and you can see my preschool graduation. And I watched myself and I was like, oh God, what's wrong with that kid? You could just see I was just uncomfortable in my own skin. So when I was
Oh wow.
watching it, I was, oh, geez, it started a lot younger than I thought. So I had waves of it. It got better, and then I assume I was getting triggered. So by the time I was like between ages like 8 and 10, I could not spend the night at people's houses. I would have an instant panic attack. And I hear that very often with other people too.
Yeah.
It was usually related around my mom. So when I hit about 12, I found this amazing thing that fixed all of my problems. It was alcohol.
Oh wow. Yeah.
So yeah. So
Wait,
that's
do you know where whose stash was it, or did you get it from somewhere else?
my parents had this awesome liquor cabinet
Okay.
that had every liquor you could think of, and I would just take a water bottle and I would just pour a bunch
Okay.
of different liquor in it. And then I'd pour water in their liquor bottles so that I wouldn't get caught. And I would bring
At,
it to sleepovers.
at what point did they find out?
I
Or
don't
did they
know.
not find out for a long time?
I think we've talked about it, and I think I told them I was like, "Yeah, I used to fill your liquor with water." They're like, "We know." So
Oh,
I
okay.
don't remember them ever saying anything about it,
Okay.
but
Interesting.
maybe they did. I don't know. I had a lot of
Yeah.
my memory is not so good.
Was there any point where your mother was also like Jesus, like get away from me kind of thing because of the over attachment?
Oh no, she's very codependent.
Ah, okay,
Yeah, she
nice.
I mean maybe, but I mean as I became a teenager and it shifted from my mom to alcohol, right? I was no
Right.
longer
Yeah, yeah.
it's still like I still have the fears of her like when she passes because I was so like attached to her. Um but yeah, as like I turned my solution just became drugs and alcohol
Right.
from age 12 to 30.
Right.
So lots of lots of triggers, lots of bouts in between that, especially when I would run out of stuff. It was just I didn't feel okay unless I had a substance of some sort.
What was it like though? I mean, because obviously like at some point in this time, I'm sure you had moments where let's say you were, I don't know, running out of your like you said, like stash of either
Yeah.
alcohol or drugs or whatever. Like what would those moments be like for you to be like, oh shit, like I was it like a little panicky thing of like, oh shit, how do I get the next thing over? Like tell me about that a bit.
So it's the same as when so I after I had a few years of sobriety,
Hmm.
two, maybe a year and a half. Well, I got sober in the middle of a huge trigger. It actually helped me get sober a little bit. So I
Yeah,
am
we talked
grateful
about
for
this. Yeah.
OCD in certain senses, actually, because it kind of brought me to my knees in the sense of you need to do something about this.
Can you,
So
sorry, can you quickly go into that a little bit as well? What you mean by how it helped you with sobriety?
yeah. So I was 29. So
Hmm.
I had already gone through many, I was addicted to heroin, crack, methadone, benzos, alcohol. And I got to a point where I had like a moment where I was like, I don't want to live like this anymore. I was 27 at the time. And I moved from Vermont to Florida to
Hmm.
do, and so I was down here for about 2 years. So from 2012 to 2014. I was attempting to stay sober. It was
Hmm.
not easy at all. Not my first time trying to get sober either. And November of 2014, I took a trip back up north to see my family. I was kind of sober, I guess.
Hmm.
I haven't done anything and I don't remember how long, but I was on the mindset of I'm sober. So I went up there. It was Thanksgiving time, and it was the day after. They call it Black Friday, up here. And then my sister sells fine wine and
Hmm.
beer. So she is a, I'm going to say this wrong. She's a sommelier or something like that.
Okay.
I butchered it, but whatever. So we were at her house, and she has all this liquor.
Hmm.
And she doesn't understand, my family doesn't necessarily don't understand OCD, nor do they really understand alcoholism.
Hmm.
Um, because they saw me go down in drugs. So they were like, oh, you can drink. And I was like, yeah,
Ah,
but
okay. Hmm.
drinking brought me, and it's not for, this is just my story, right? My
Yeah, yeah.
experience, but drinking brought me to drugs, back to drinking, back to, you know what I mean? So I used it. It was just another drug to me.
Yeah.
But they saw me go really downhill with like the heavy drugs. So they were like, "Oh, you can drink." And I'm like, "No, I can't." So she was offering me something. She goes, "Hey, do you want to try this? It's super good. It's hard cider. It's blah blah blah." And I was like, "No, I can't."
Hmm.
And 2 seconds later, she asked me again, and I was like, "Yeah, sure." Sounded like a great idea. That moment, I took a sip and I had a panic attack. So the trigger of like, you're doing something wrong just took over everything. The
Yeah.
fear of rejection from my entire AA community took over. And so I took that drink and that was it. That was my last drink. And for the next like 3 months, I was just in like a constant panic attack. And the compulsion
Wow.
and the reassurance. And so I didn't want to tell anyone because I was so ashamed.
I mean, I would imagine there's and we'll go into this a little bit later as well, but like, I think the just the overlap of overall withdrawal symptoms, I think, and plus like OCD ramping up all together all at once, I'm sure it was just a flood that probably rushed in.
It was rough. I was taking anti-anxiety meds, trying to stop it, but I was also trying to not take anything that wasn't sober, so it was
Mm,
interesting time. So about 3 months into that, I was very desperate for relief. So I just admitted everything. I admitted it to a woman that's my sponsor today, and she took me through the steps, right, to help
right.
me get sober, which that helped. And it was amazing.
Yeah.
And then, like, a year and a half in, I was like, something's missing because I had no solution to my OCD.
Yeah, yeah. No, of course.
So
I can relate to that in the sense of my initial years of going for trauma therapy. I think like in like they were obviously helpful in the sense of having like an understanding of how traumatic events help you sorry affect you, and how they impact your life and influence your personality and your thinking and all of that. But I had the same feeling. I think after a while I was like, wait, something's still missing though. um and of course, OCD in general will always make you feel like something's missing, but I could see just on an objective level, I could also see that across those years, my compulsive behaviors had gotten far worse as well. Because my contamination compulsions especially had intensified and multiplied. My relationship OCD stuff, down to the confessing and the venting and the reassurance, was also compounded because it was all coming from a place of, oh, because I have trauma stored in my body, therefore I need to do these things. Like it was almost like a justification for that. But yeah, I mean, I think at some point I realized that, okay, no, I mean, the insight and the understanding of all of that is great and amazing. And I have been able to make certain changes on that front as well, which, help me improve my family relationship and my friendships and all of that. But then also at the same time, I was like, no, I think I need to do something else as well because I'm still so damn stuck in my behaviors. I'm not able to give them up. So I understand that feeling as well. Um, this might be, I'm not looking for a specific answer over here. This might be a hard question to answer as well, but like, where would you say, for you at least, what are some of the major overlaps and commonalities that you have seen with yourself with addiction and OCD and how they operate?
um well, first of all, the complete misunderstanding with people that don't have OCD, right? So that just like with so I came across a lot of that with people that didn't understand alcoholism or addiction. Um, and then when I got into a program of alcoholic addiction, they also didn't understand OCD because
Right.
I for the first like 2 years, my sponsor was like, "Oh, this is just untreated alcoholism. We'll just do this. We'll just do." So my brain was like, "Oh, I just have to do more recovery. I have to
Yeah,
do
yeah,
more." So I was like addicted to recovery for AA for a long time. So
yeah.
imagine I started OCD recovery. But and I got to a point where it was it was not a good situation. And she finally
Hmm.
looked at me and was like, "Oh yeah, no, you need to go somewhere else for that." And I was like, okay. And that's when I started really looking for help with OCD.
Yeah.
So a lot of it, I mean, the compulsions, right? um to me it's two separate things, but it's also to me it's like the same thing. And if anyone else has like addictions, whatever those may be, and which most of us do, I guess.
Mm.
And then that OCD component, I think it's it was hard for me to distinguish between it. But for me, the OCD was something that had been with me since I was a kid. So so when I found OCD recovery, it was when I found AA, it was great. I loved I found people that understood me. And
Hmm.
then but then like I got to a point where I was like, yeah, but they don't understand this stuff.
Yeah.
And then when I found you guys, I tell my friends in AA that like this is these are like my people. So funny story, I just went away last weekend
Hmm.
and we were talking about a friend of mine is going to Dubai. And
Hmm.
oh my God, I have a friend in Dubai.
Yeah.
And my sponsor looks at me, she's like, no, you don't. And I was like, yes, I do. And she's like, no, you don't. And I was like, I have other friends besides you. Uh, but it was finding you guys was like a I found like my people, if that
Right.
makes sense.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
just you AA can I can that is my language, but it was just like there was just that piece missing, and that piece was you guys.
Right. Yeah, no, I can imagine because again, I think like there's I'm sure there's a lot of language, and I'm to some degree, I mean, I won't say I'm not completely oblivious to even like the language and everything that's used in AA. I think I'm fairly familiar with quite a bit of it. But I would imagine, obviously, that even the kind of like vocabulary and explanations that you need to find for OCD itself as well, I think those are hard to find too. So I think that to be able to put a certain language to something like fear of fear, I think, like, I mean, I think that's so important because otherwise you don't understand at all what's going on with you, and it feels really confusing in that way. Were you ever I don't think I've ever asked you, like, were you ever like officially like diagnosed with OCD?
So yes,
Okay.
eventually. Um
When was that?
in 20 in 2016 when I started seeing a panic therapist.
Okay.
And he didn't want to diagnose me. He kept saying, "Oh, you have obsessive components."
Mm-hmm.
I'm over here. I'm like, I can't even put on chapstick because I'm afraid there's alcohol in it and I'm gonna get drunk. Like
Yeah,
that
yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
literally where I was at. And he's like, yeah, you have obsessive components. And I'm like, what does that mean? Um, and then I specifically went to an OCD therapist.
Okay.
She diagnosed me. And my I a psychiatrist
Okay.
also diagnosed me. So I do have like an actual diagnosis.
Okay.
Uh,
Because I think
multiple.
many people don't, I mean, including myself, I never really had an official like diagnosis. I think it's funny because I feel like at the time I told my therapist that I have OCD, like because
Yeah.
I thought, based off of everything I have now at this point read and everything, I'm like 99% sure I also have OCD as well. And then but I still never got an official diagnosis, and I think I never took like meds long term. I think I just tried like I think maybe 2 months, 3 months. I think I just
Mhm.
went on meds because at the time I still didn't know like what else do I do with like this constant 24/7 anxiety. I was like, you know what, maybe meds might help me, and maybe that will help me also change my behaviors as well. Spoiler alert, it did not help me change my behaviors because I didn't have
It
any
doesn't.
I mean I didn't have either like OCD recovery or ROB or anything else at the time. So for me, I thought that okay, maybe the reduction in anxiety will give me the motivation I need to give up my compulsive behaviors, but that didn't happen. But when I went to that psychiatrist and in my first like sitting with him, and it's a funny thing because it was just like a what barely like a 15-minute conversation, which doesn't even like go in depth with anything, and it's like. Oh, you have this and this, you're experiencing this. Okay, I'm just going to prescribe you this. And I'm like, that's it. Like, I mean, it's just that kind of process. And I'm sure many people have experienced that. Um, even though I wasn't expecting like a full hour of like in-depth, this is my life story kind of thing, but still I was like, okay, that's it. But I said to him, I said I have OCD, and he said, "Who told you you have OCD?" And
Me.
I said, look, don't challenge me on this. Like, I know I have OCD. I've at this point I had it for many years. These are my and then I had to lay it out for him in the language. So then he knew I wasn't just like I wasn't someone who had just looked up like a random article on OCD and just like self-diagnosed. Like he understood that I had, properly, and also the fact that I was in therapy at the time as well. So he knew that my therapist also knew this and whatnot. So he was like, okay. But yeah, it's many people don't get an official diagnosis for it. But obviously, I think people are also not stupid either. So even if they don't have a diagnosis, they pretty much do find out at some point that, oh, this is what it is, based off everything they come across online.
I think it's that confusion, not also wanting to be confused on like what's wrong with me. Because for years
Yeah,
was what's wrong with me? Oh, I just have anxiety. Oh, it's just crappy anxiety.
yeah.
And then I sought for an answer, right?
Mhm.
So, I mean, yeah, it's not needed. It's not like a necessity.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
I
would
mean, I
also
want it
like
to be,
you
but
to yeah, no, of course. I would also like you to speak a little bit about, because I think it is really honestly like a really good like story of hope and inspiration as well in that way. Like talking about the years of where you were where you were still addicted, right?
Mhm.
And how, because a lot of people with, for instance, real event or false memory OCD especially, they will be obsessing over things that have happened in the past, and they'll be like, how can I, live that down? Like, how can I live with the fact that I've done this and this was so embarrassing, I lied to this person, I made broke this person's heart, and that happened and that happened. So I want you to try and explain in whatever words, your own language, the acceptance part of yourself and your past based off of how tumultuous it was before.
um, so when I was drinking and drugging, I drank and drugged to go into oblivion because I didn't want to feel anything,
Yeah.
right? The addiction aspect and then also the OCD aspect where I was avoiding and running. Um, the feelings, I want to answer your, I feel like I didn't answer your other question correctly. So, because I
Mm,
didn't do it correctly. So when it comes to my years of drinking and drugging, it was constant escape,
mm,
if that makes sense.
mm-hmm,
Um, anytime I would be triggered with anything. And the real event, um, I definitely have some real event, that's for sure.
mm,
Um, when it comes to just trying to figure out the past and things that actually did happen.
mm,
And like guilt of it afterwards, or it was my fault, or if only I have done this, or did I do this? And that, questioning and obviously under the influence. So what was actually happening versus
yeah.
it being like a figment of my imagination. Um, I think I think the real event, again, my memory not so great. I lived in oblivion when I was on methadone from age like 22 to 27. There's not a lot that I remember because every time I would do the methadone, I would then smoke so much pot, I would pass out.
Oh
I
wow.
would take a quarter of a bottle of like NyQuil because the methadone and the pot and the Xanax weren't enough.
Do you
So
feel
remember,
like, do you sometimes feel like it's a miracle that you're even alive, to be honest? I
oh, I
mean,
don't know how. The
yeah,
amount of times I drove hammered, the amount of times I don't, I, to my knowledge, I never overdosed. I don't
yeah.
know how. Um, I mean, I was in so many car accidents,
Oh wow.
but they were all so I've so the car accidents and anything like that. Oh, you know what? I do have a real event. So, I don't tell a lot of people this. I've told my sponsor this, but I don't mind telling you guys.
Yeah.
So I was heavily into crack cocaine,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a very large bust in my community, and about 25 people were arrested.
Okay.
So I never sold it or any, I was just there. I was just the chick in the corner, doing the stuff. So I never got arrested for it. So right after there was like no drugs because all the people got busted. And there was two gentlemen that I was with. And we were looking for drugs and we met with this woman at a gas station. And they're like, wait in the car, we'll go get it. I was like, yeah, okay. So I'm sitting in the car and a few minutes go by and I look over and she wasn't giving up her drugs. So they basically assaulted her um in many different ways, sexually,
Oh
they went and got
wow.
drugs, if you know what I mean, because she was hiding them in herself.
Oh shit.
And I remember just staring, being like, oh my God. And they run out, get in my car, and they're like, take off. I took off. So that was a huge source of guilt.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, unlike what that did to her, and the guilt was like all her, her related.
Of course.
Like I was a part of that. Like I did it. I basically did
Yeah.
it. So I would spend all this time like, no, you didn't. And then I was like, yeah, you did. You're the drive away car. So those type of situations um that were really embedded in my head of you're a bad person.
And I'm assuming that's also very sadly to say, I'm assuming though that stuff is also really common as well when you're in the addiction community in general. That kind of
Yeah.
like, danger and also like violence that comes with that. Because at
Yeah.
the moment, like like all you need and want is that one specific thing, and you would do anything to get that.
It's the same thing as like reassurance. So like the addiction to
Yes, yes.
needing, like in my ROCD, just needing that reassurance that my boyfriend wants to marry me. Or whatever it may be, or at work, like I did the right thing and we're going to be success, whatever it is. There's just like it's the same type of like yearning. So like
Yeah.
addiction and OCD is it's the same feeling. And so in alcoholism, from my experience and what I've learned, it's there's like this bodily part to the addiction.
Yeah.
And it's called like an allergy, right? And so so before I put the drink or drug in my mouth, right, before I actually take it, I'm obsessing, right? And I'm
Yeah,
sure we
yeah.
can all obsessing. But once I put it into my body, there's this like almost allergic reaction that I need more. It's almost like a burning
Right.
sensation in my chest. And the same thing happens with like reassurance or my compulsions, right? It's like that burning for it to, like I seek reassurance, I get the answer, but then it's like, well, wait, I forgot
More.
to mention this one little piece and it's going to change everything. It
Yeah.
happened to me yesterday. I said something to my sponsor. And then my brain went, well, you didn't tell her all this stuff. But now I can be like, okay, well, I'm not gonna.
Yeah.
And it's not as easy as like just that. Oh, I'm not gonna. Sometimes it is. Sometimes
Yeah.
it is now. It's that easy.
Which I think leads me to my next question as well, because I was also going to ask you, like, what would you say, like, what would you consider are some of the biggest positive changes that you've made in the last, let's say, like 2.5 years of working on OCD recovery?
Well, Depends on when you ask me. Because if I'm triggered, I'd be like, nothing's changed,
It's all
and
the
I'm
same.
just square one, and uh, but if I actually look at it
Yeah.
from my first call, the oh my God, I was so scared. I talked to Nick and Rob my first call,
Mm,
and I was like, they're not going to be able to help with anything. And like I mentioned all these things about my fear of relapse and all this stuff. They're like, yeah, we can help with that. And I'm like, you don't know anything about drinking. And my brain was just
yeah.
so resistant. And then um, and then my next few calls after that, I was so rigid. And so I was so afraid that I wasn't going to get what I wanted. I had a multitude of things happening, and I was like, my life will be over if these things happened.
Yeah.
Right. Well, most of those things have happened. Hey, it's not over yet. No,
Yeah.
I still have a way to go. I still have a lot to learn. Getting more comfortable, like you and I had talked about, getting more comfortable just being in that uncomfortable moment
Yeah.
and wearing it and stuff like that. But the perception is completely different. My perception on, and again, I still have a lot to work on that with the two, but like my acceptance in some areas, my acceptance of other people, and that's wavering, right? But like
Yeah.
anything I've ever done and ever worked on, it's always going to be like that.
Right. Yeah.
And it's very different. It is very different between 22. So I met you guys in August of 22.
Mm,
I did a couple things, thought I was amazing.
yeah.
I remember being like, oh my God, my perspectives have changed. And then in February of 24, I had a lovely, lovely relapse. Um, for the entire summer too. So it went
Yeah.
from that point all the way through. I think I cried to you many times. Um, and
I also remember some of our early calls as well. I distinctly remember. By the way, sometimes when I work with people, they're sometimes very surprised about me remembering things because they assume that maybe I've forgotten that something has happened. But I usually remember 95% of the things that have happened. And I distinctly remember one of the things I was telling you at the time to do was I was like, you need to get a ticket and go see your family because that's something that you were really avoiding for many different reasons. And you're like, no,
yeah.
that's going to be so uncomfortable. I don't want to do this. And I was like, yeah, that's exactly why we need to do that. And I remember that call very well.
Mhm. I remember you telling me I need to get comfortable being like a dirt bag, kind of. Yeah, I don't think you used that word, but you used
Yeah,
some.
because dirtbag is not a word that I usually use, but
I know I
it,
can't think of
it was
the
something along the lines of like, you need to get used to being maybe like a shit person or something like that.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's probably it. And I was like,
What do you
wow.
mean?
I was like, no, 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 no. Because in AA, I have to be this amazing spiritual person. Ugh.
Yeah.
That is something I created, just a heads up.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. I think and again, that's why right before this call, I was like, for everyone, I was saying to Shelly that she needs to write a book about her life because I'm sure because I mean this is just a very very short snapshot of your life that we've just discussed over here. But I'm sure the stories that you probably have experienced from age 12 to age 30, I'm sure have been um in some ways also like life changing and life altering in that way. And like because some things stay with you but then you learn from that as well, and as you work on yourself, I think there's also compassion and grace for your own self as well, for not knowing any better at the time, and whether it's under the influence or whatever it is, like ultimately like you have to take that accountability as well. And I'm sure like those were probably a lot of hard conversations as well with your sponsor as well, of
Yeah.
being like, hey, I did this and this kind of thing.
So I ironically, by the time I met her, I was so latched to, I've done something wrong in the
Mm,
past. I'm gonna do recovery wrong. That when I got to the fourth and fifth is where you like admit your
mm,
defaults and all that stuff. Um, I was like, "Are you ready? Are you ready to hear my stuff? What if I forgot something? Oh my God, I'm gonna forget that." I would call her while I was doing this. I was writing the list, and I was like, I'm gonna forget something. And she's like, is it on your mind right now? And I'm like, well, no. And she's like, yeah, no, that's not a thing. And I was like, no, 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 but there's something there that I'm gonna
yeah,
forget and then I'm gonna drink. So it's the same thing with OCD
yeah,
recovery.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
missing that one component moment. I don't know
That
what it
one
is.
thing. Yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna, go on a OCD bender.
Quick question, and I know you need to leave for work as well, but a quick question that I also want to ask you is that did you have to go through like that process of making amends at any point?
Yes.
And was that difficult to do with people?
That was a lot of people when the 12 steps are presented, a majority of people are afraid of 4 and 5 because they're
Mm,
afraid. But for me, it was a compulsion to
mm,
seek reassurance and vent. So it wasn't necessarily the scary part for me. The 8 and 9 is where you face other people.
yeah,
So not all of them were hard, but a good majority because I had to go over it with her first, right?
yeah,
Because if I made amends by myself, they would have been awful, and I would have been admitting things I probably didn't even do. Because
yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, so those were yes. I look back on them now, and I'm very grateful that I did them. But that was the harder part
And
is facing.
was everyone like, or were there any in between that were maybe not forgiving or something?
So the ones that were not forgiving are the ones I think wouldn't allow me to make amends to them. Like people that I
Um,
did a number on. And
mm,
I would ask them because, just to be appropriate and polite, like, may I make amends to you? And it was like, no, you don't owe me amends. And I'm like,
I'm pretty sure I do.
okay, we'll go with that. But
Yeah,
that was their choice, right?
yeah,
You don't force yourself on people if they choose not to hear you out. So I think that those were
yeah.
the people who either didn't want to hear me or were delusional.
Yeah, I think, I mean, and this is a separate conversation, and maybe at some point we can do a part two about it as well. I mean, I would also be curious to hear from you, and we can obviously just have a back and forth discussion on that too, where like because I'm sure some people listening to this might be like, oh wait, like maybe I also need to make amends now. Maybe I do need to call that person up from like 6, 7 years ago. So I think at some point I want to have a conversation with you as well about just the overlap slash balance of
Yeah.
amends, but also at the same time reassurance and venting as well. Because, and this is why, like, again, the OCD recovery plan that we try and make for everyone is so contextual to everyone's situation. Because, like, it can't, like, for me, like in your situation, I also understand why that step was important, but then, I mean, of course, like if you're going back to those people repeatedly over and over again, then it becomes a problem. But I think
Or
that's a good discussion
it,
to
it,
have.
it can be very extreme. And I would love to talk to you about that. Yeah. Especially also people listening to this might be like, well, wait, am I an alcoholic?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like, nah,
Mm.
most
Or,
likely not.
but by
I
the
mean,
way,
maybe,
the
but
people who are, I mean, obviously it can also be very arbitrary as well, who might not be necessarily alcoholics, but they do use alcohol as a coping mechanism quite frequently, like several
mhm.
times a week kind of thing. They haven't, their lives haven't fallen apart particularly.
Yeah.
But I always think about, well, maybe not yet, because it is a compulsive thing. And as anything compulsively that we do eventually grows usually in magnitude and
Yeah.
intensity. So yeah, it's always a slight word of warning for those people sometimes as well.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
again,
Do that.
Shelly, thank you for being here. Go save some animals. Which, by the way, okay, Shelly is also. What are you? Are you a vet or you work in a
Vet
veterinary hospital?
Veterinary practice manager. So I'm not
Okay.
the doctor, but I get to tell them
But
what to do.
you play a role in the larger ecosystem of saving and helping animals, which I
Mhm.
think like makes you rank above all other people that I do one-to-one calls with, you know. So
Because I love cats, Momin.
exactly, exactly. So there are
I don't know
some.
if you can see some of my animals on my couch. There's
Oh, there's
two
three,
in
right?
the other
Oh,
room.
okay.
Yeah.
Very nice. Okay. Shelly, thank you so much. I'll see you around. Have a good day.
Okay. Thanks, Momin.
Bye.
Bye.